To start off, I can't believe it's nearly the new year. I've spent many recent nights reflecting on my first 6 months as superintendent. And in short, I truly feel blessed to be a member of Team ASD and in the Anchorage community. And were there some curveballs that were thrown along the way? Absolutely. But through all the challenges, it's clear that we are a resilient community that loves our schools. So before I share a couple of reflections on this year, let me just address the elephant in the room, which is the snow days. So back in November, actually here at the dais, I joked that my hailing from the warm state of Texas had nothing to do with my decision to call a snow day. And tonight, I continue to stress, again, I really promise that this has nothing to do with me being from Texas. But all joking aside, these recent weather events were severe and necessitated numerous days of closure to ensure the safety of students, families, and staff. It was also evidence that the sheer volume of snow in a short period of time put unprecedented strain on the Muni's ability to remove the snow. And as always, we're willing to be all hands on deck to support the Muni however we can through this situation and future weather events. So with that weather event behind us, we do need to focus on a path forward. So to recap for the public, the district calendared for 2 snow days. Because we closed for a total of 7 days this year, we have been developing plans for how to address 5 days of lost learning time. While it's unlikely any plan will have universal support across every community member, I will say that staff and myself have done due diligence in consulting with numerous stakeholders, including union leadership and as recently as this afternoon, the state. So with that said, and here's the dense part, pending state approval and potentially board approval, the district proposes the following plan to address the makeup days. The administration recommends that from January 30th to March 9th, 30 minutes will be added to the instructional day. That is the equivalent of about 3 days total. And again, that would begin January 30th. Why do we choose that date? Because campus leaders need time to finalize how this impacts school schedules once we get back to school, given the upcoming winter holiday. Additionally, February 22nd and 23rd will become full instructional days in lieu of the scheduled parent-teacher conferences with half school day, as was currently slated. Lastly, the district proposes making February 24th a full instructional day. That would be in lieu of the currently slated professional development day. So this adds roughly 5 instructional days back to the calendar. We recognize that this plan and any plan entails trade-offs. I've heard from many community members these past couple of weeks on this topic. Some advocated for asking DEED to waive all 5 days, and others on the opposite end of the spectrum advocated for adding days to the end of the calendar. The rationale behind this plan is that it minimally alters the calendar and recognizes the importance of instructional time. Many have wondered why the district did not opt for remote learning like others. In ASD, we would have needed students, particularly elementary students, to be in school long enough to receive technology and paper materials to aid in remote learning. Given the many consecutive snow days, that was not feasible for a district of our size. So while not perfect, I do believe remote learning is a viable option for future inclement weather days, but we want to make sure that we execute it well and to ensure true continuity of the learning experience. I do anticipate that remote learning will be a central part of our inclement weather strategy moving forward, and I've asked staff to begin planning for that. So in short, the district sees great value in the in-person learning experience, and this plan, pending approval from DEED and the board, makes up for lost instructional time and causes less disruption than many of the other options that were on the table. There are still particulars that need to be discussed with union leadership as soon as tomorrow, and then DEED still needs to formally approve this, but I intend to be collaborative with all of those stakeholders and others to get to resolution quickly. So in the long term, this situation also opens the opportunity to look at future school calendars and propose adjustments that could account for similar weather events to the one that happened this month. So tonight, I really just wanted to share this high-level overview of the current plan, and staff will finalize and communicate the specifics in the coming days. We appreciate the community's patience. Every additional snow day altered the path forward and necessitated input from the state, AEA leadership, and others. That process took time and it was well worth it, and we're finally in a position to share a plan today. So that is my snow update. So I'm sure there'll be questions and I'm happy to answer them. But again, I want to clarify that some details will need to emerge in the coming days now that the state and AEA and others are aware that this is coming. So I could address the snow questions now, and then I want to go back to some broader observations.
So when will we hear from, we don't know when we're going to hear from Deed? And was there a request to waive any of the days to Deed? So Deed and I did have a conversation, and what emerged is that we need to have a plan to address learning continuity. It was not going to be favorable from very many parties at all to advocate for full waivers, especially when there were multiple opportunities in our calendar to make up learning time in a way that was minimally disruptive. And there was also an opportunity to add minutes. So I will just keep it at the fact that Deed is aware of this plan. It won't be a surprise, and I intend to submit a waiver that outlines what I shared with the board. And I have no reason to believe that that will not be approved, but I still need to receive formal notice from Deed in the coming weeks. So at what point will you anticipate it coming to the board?
And then for the board specifically, we could put this in a memo going into next month, as these changes wouldn't have any sort of formal impact until February, but we did want to put it out there because there will be some very specific questions, particularly with union leadership, just to clarify messaging and to iron out a few specifics that are not of interest to the general public, but are very important to me to make sure that we look out for our employees.
Okay, thank you. Member Lesson.
So I have two questions. Number one, winter hasn't actually started yet. Bad news. That happens in a couple more days. So what happens if we have additional snow days? That's question number one. And then question number two is, what is our sense of time? So if we add 30 minutes to the instructional day, are we staying with initial morning start times and then just adding 30 minutes? Or are we going earlier and later? Like, could you give us a sense of that direction, because there are families who are going to need to plan.
And I know that that's something that's going to come up, and I'm not ready to share those specifics because there are also specific things I want to talk to AEA and others about before I share that plan. But I did want to share at a high level, this is how we'll address the time, and now we need to address the logistics when it comes to start and end times. And again, this wouldn't start until January 30th, so I hope to iron out these specifics to where we can get to that point as soon as possible for families to be informed. In terms of the question about future snow days, again, it depends on the magnitude. Making up one day is a very different proposition than making up a week or even more. And this was truly unprecedented in that it was multiple weather events and consecutive weather days that really the calculus was changing in live time, day by day. So it was a dynamic situation. But I will say that there are some merits to remote learning for a number of reasons. One, we wouldn't have to necessarily adjust the calendar. And two, if we have the time to deploy appropriate levels of technology and paper materials, I think that we can make remote learning work, but we weren't ready to do that given how abruptly this weather event occurred.
Okay, questions? Okay. Why don't you continue with your report?
All right. So now, lastly, I just wanted to share a couple of just general reflections as a point of personal privilege, given that it's been about 8 months of listening and learning as superintendent. So I do want to say that while this semester has been defined by a number of crises, it has shown me that this community is always willing to support our students, who is our city's future. I saw that just weeks into my superintendency when we had to halt use of Ursa Major this summer due to seismic concerns. The community was quick to ask how they could support, and our school leaders on Jaber in particular ensured that Ursa Major students and teachers felt welcomed and embraced in their new schools. And I saw that resilience again when Thousands of community volunteers and the Muni and JBER leaders and others assisted the district through a transportation crisis. And with their help, we finally put that short-term challenge behind us. And then since July, our community has been sharing feedback and creative ideas with the district on ways that we can work together to address our structural deficit. And I was also heartened to meet many legislators and business leaders and assembly members and many others who have been sharing the true story of ASD and what's needed to catalyze state level change to really bolster education funding. It takes a village to address this huge topic of school funding in Alaska, and we truly have great people in our corner advocating for positive change. So that was heartening to me. And I'll close by saying all that to say thank you, Anchorage, and thank you to the staff and the board for your role in getting us through quite a challenging year for ASD. While planning for another even larger structural deficit for fiscal year 25 will be inevitable unless change happens at the state level. We've made progress. We made progress tonight, and we'll continue to share how ASD and districts across the state got to these dire financial situations and what needs to be done to fix the root of the issue. So with some of these challenges behind us, I'm also ready to look towards our future as a district, and I'll be finalizing the staffing of my leadership team in the coming days so we can finally implement some of the changes that need to happen to achieve our goals. So that concludes my report. Happy holidays to all. I'll be personally dreaming of a white Christmas, but I won't be hoping for another 40 inches of snow, but that's just me. So thank you.